attempt to do some to our service this morning. If you have your Bibles, or if you have your study books, you can go to Matthew 5. We're still in Matthew 5. And you know, I was telling Brother Chris earlier, as a Christian, and I'm speaking for myself, as a Christian, if I just had the book of Acts, and I had the 3 chapters of Matthew, Matthew 5, 6, and 7, those 3 chapters, I believe with all my heart that a person could live a Christian life if he just had that. The book of Acts tells us how to become a Christian, and then Matthew 5, 6, and 7, Jesus' sermon telling us in a nutshell, if you want to say it that way, of what his teachings was all about. If you notice, the first study we had was what? It was on the Beatitudes. Then we had it on adultery, marriage. Then we looked at lust in our lessons. And we looked at forgiveness in one of the lessons. Today we're going to focus upon transforming love. God is love, isn't he? If God is in us, notice what I'm saying, if God is really in us as Christians, then we should have no problem of transforming love to other people. But oh, how hard it is at times because we are human. You know, Christ gives us a lot of teachings. They're hard teachings. They're teachings that we as humans, a lot of times we can't live up to. I think Jesus knew this when he was teaching his people. That none of them would ever be perfect in applying all of his teachings. But I think his reason was this, as it is for us today. Our living today as Christians is to imitate as much as humanly possible in our lives the teaching that Jesus Christ taught us. And I believe with all my heart that Acts and these 3 chapters in Matthew, we could actually get along. If I was in prison somewhere, you can say it this way, if I was in a prison somewhere where I was not allowed to have a Bible, but somebody could bring me the book of Acts and these 3 chapters, I believe that I would find joy and happiness if I could at all while in prison. But anyway, we know that Jesus taught us this. We are to love everyone, not just our family, not just our children, but we are, as we studied that, we are to love what? Even our enemies. That's hard to do, isn't it? As I told Chris this morning, and we were talking about this, I said, Chris, you know, I said, it would be hard from a human standpoint if you killed one of my children. And I saw it. It would be hard for me not to leave without having hate against you. I said, that's the human side of us. Jesus knew we were human. But Jesus knew also that we had a way out through him. But we are also to pray for everyone who persecutes us. Persecution comes in different ways. And you know, I think you've heard this before. Abuse can be verbally or physical. But a lot of times, abuse verbally carries more hurt than physical abuse. Because we can get over physical abuse, it can heal. But a lot of times, verbal abuse will stay with us to the rest of our life. One of the hardest things in the world to get rid of. And Jesus is going to teach us today some hard teachings as Christians. But as Christians, we are to do our best, our utmost, to try to live by his standards. Have you ever heard of Hammurabi? You ever heard that name? Hammurabi was a king, a Babylonian king, back way before Moses. He ruled his nation on 192 laws that he gave to bring justice to his people. One of those laws that he gave, and by the way, he lived from 1792 to somewhere around 1750. Well, the Exodus from Egypt was only around 1440 BC. So he lived around 300 to 400 years before even the Exodus of God's people out of Egypt. But Hammurabi said this in one of his codes. Now, I'm not going to get into all of his codes, but this one I'm going to say because it's in our lesson today. He said, one eye for one eye. That was his judgment. So we see then that Christ comes along several centuries before Moses gave the law to the people of Israel. This Babylonian king gave rules to his kingdom that we find a lot of in the rules that God handed down to his people through Moses. We also know that Jesus taught a much better. That's better. It was much more radical way than an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth. So let's see how his way works in our lives. How does it best fit us as Christians? Well, we see that in verse 38, God's limited retaliation given to his people. We also see in verses 39 through 42 that he teaches no retaliation whatsoever. So, what is he saying? Now, I'm going to be reading from the NIRB, the New International Reader's Version, because the reason I want to read it from that is because I feel like it gets down to a level that even a child can understand what he's saying. But listen to the words of Jesus. You have heard. Now he's talking to the people here. Keep in mind, he's still in his sermon now. He said, you have heard that it was said, an eye must be put out for an eye. A tooth must be knocked out for a tooth. In other words, what he's saying here, if I harm Chris, if I pluck one of his eyes out, then the judgment is that I must have my eye plucked out. It's interesting, though, that I was telling Chris that during the Roman Empire in Athens, they had a stricter law than this. Let's say that I came up to a one-eyed person that was blind in one eye. And I did harm to that person and I took his eye out. Well, the law for the Romans in Athens, they were to take both of my eyes and put them out. Because the law said for equal justice, I had to be put in the same condition as that man that was completely blind. So they would take out both of the person's eyes. We see in Exodus 21:24 and Leviticus 24:20, Deuteronomy 19 and 21, we see where these laws that Moses gave that were told to the people. In verse 39 he said, but here is what I tell you. This is Jesus telling them that this is what you have heard, talking about under the prophets and over before. But here is what I tell you. Do not fight against an evil person. Do not fight against an evil person. If I see somebody's evil, don't take the fight to him. So suppose then someone hits you on the right cheek. Turn your other cheek to him also. And I can take this a little bit deeper than that. I believe, I understand, I think this is talking about physical punishment, physical abuse. Because if you go back under the Jewish traditions and things, one of the worst insults you could do was to walk up to somebody and slap him. Can you remember during the turn of the 17th and 18th century in England and places like this where they had duels? Remember that? What was the very thing that they did that they were asking for retaliation for something someone did? They would slap them in the face, wouldn't they? At that particular time in our history, it was one of the worst things a person could do is for abuse. And Jesus is saying here, if you are slapped, then turn the other cheek. Well, I want to take that a step further. If I abuse you by slapping you, by telling lies, or accusing you of something that you didn't do, I think what Jesus is teaching here too is that I should turn around, walk away. So I'm getting away from the physical abuse, and I'm getting away from the verbal abuse by simply not retaliating. And this is what Jesus, I believe, is saying here when he says, turn the other cheek. You know, I found in life that one of the things that make people madder than anything is not to argue with them, not to agree with them, but to look at them and say, I love you, and walk away. It took me several years of my life to come to that point. I used to be a young man one time, and my wife will tell you, I could stand toe-to-toe with anybody. And I learned. My dad told me one time, He said, son, one of these days, your tongue is going to get you in trouble. It did. Not just once, but many a time. But Jesus is telling us here, verbal abuse can be just as bad as physical abuse. You can take a slap in the face. You can take a bruise on the arm, and it'll go away. But to be hurt by words, it just seems to linger all the time. So Jesus is telling us, watch this. Now, verse 40 says, suppose someone takes you to court to get your shirt. Let him have your coat also. So suppose someone forces you to go 1 mile. Go 2 miles with him. Give to the one who asks you for something. Don't turn away from the one who wants to borrow something from you. Now let's look at these 3 verses. Jesus, if you remember last week, Jesus told him, said, if you're going to go to court, do what? Try to settle the problem before you get there. Because we said it would do what? It would bring rebuke upon, reproach upon the church as well as the Christian. Well, Jesus is saying here, if somebody takes your shirt, show them that you're generous enough to turn around and give them your coat also. Don't give them any chance to come back and retaliate and then take it. Just hand it to them. Can you imagine if somebody came in, let's just use this, into a bank, let's say. And I'm saying this, and I believe this could happen. And he walked up to the teller and he said, listen, I want all the money you have in your cash register. And she starts to get the money out. And she said, well, so I can give you also the money that's in the vault. Do you think that robber is going to stop by just asking her for the money in the cash register? No. He's going to ask for the money in the vault also, isn't he? So a lot of times we can prevent maybe further abuse being applied. And Jesus is saying here, if I take a coat or if I take a shirt from somebody, then that person should also give me his coat. Because I'm going to get it one way or the other anyway. Why would I want his shirt and not his coat? Then he goes off, he says, if somebody forces you to go a mile, well, back in the time of the Roman Empire, they had messengers. The word leads me now, couriers, I think, that would take messages across the country. Well, they were endowed power to walk up to somebody and say, I want your horse. And they had to give it to them. I want you to do this. They had to do it. That was the law at that time. So Jesus here is using this analogy to represent what they already know about. A lot of times people would retaliate and not do what they were asked to do. And they would have to suffer the consequences later. But Jesus has said here, if you're forced to go a mile, look at them and say, I'm going to go 2 miles for you. Then he says in the 42nd verse, he said, give to the one who asked you for something. Don't turn away from the one who wants to borrow something from you. Well, you know, there's a lot of times that Proverbs teaches us that the poor man is under bondage to a rich man. We're also taught that as Christians, we are not to borrow unless we have to. And Jesus is teaching here that if I come up to you and you have the ability to help me, as a Christian, I am obligated to help my brother or sister. And another thing that we, a lot of times, we overlook too in our teachings, is that Jesus also taught that we are to do things without even expecting anything in return. You know, God has all the knowledge and wisdom He has. He even set up guidelines for His own people. That if they fell into a hardship and they had to sell themselves into slavery, or if they had to sell their property, He made it a way that where every 50 years, I believe, they got everything back. Would it be nice if you could buy a home today, go down to the bank, and knowing that in so many years before the loan came due that it would be taken care of? Well, God looked after His people. But I want to look at some case studies today. Look at the problems that we have in our society today. John Smith's family had a swimming pool surrounded by an 8-foot fence. While they were away on vacation, Brian Jones scales the fence to go swimming. He slips on the wet surface and breaks his leg. Now I want to ask you a question. In our society today, what do you think would happen in this situation? It'd be a lawsuit, wouldn't it? Now I'm going to ask you the second question. And be honest with me. Do you think that our law is right in letting somebody sue that person? But yet we are responsible. That's why we have to carry home insurance. It's so that we can protect ourselves. Because I read an article one time that Pike County had more lawyers per capita than any city in the United States. Well, I've often wondered why. This is one of the reasons right here. We are so worldly today that we look for things that we can sue our neighbors for. Then it says, Jones sued the Smiths, which he figured, and the judge ordered the Smiths to pay Jones' medical bill. Now, did you know, I read an article one time that similar to this, that they had an 8-foot fence, they had a locked gate, they had a pool covering over it, and they had no trespassing signs. And still, the courts found the intruder innocent in his lawsuit. You know, it's a shame that Jesus is saying this to us. Turn the other cheek. Yeah, I did something wrong. I broke into a man's private area. I slipped and I broke my leg. I'm the guilty party, not the Smiths. And yet, our society today see things a little bit different. What might the Smith's human reaction been in this situation? Should have been this, shouldn't it? Hey, I will take care of your medical bills anyway. Okay? But what should Brian have said? Brian said, no. I'm the one that's guilty. You owe me nothing. But that's Jesus' teaching. It's not to retaliate or to try to get back, not to have revenge. So, we see then in Proverbs it says this: the rich ruler rules over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. That is so truthful today. Do not be one who shakes hands in a pledge or puts up security for a debt. Well, in our society today, you don't get anything unless you do put up collateral, do you? Well, back then, it was, things were done, and I can remember my grandfather telling me and my dad doing things that he never did nothing. He said, if your word is not good enough, a piece of paper is not going to help you. I've heard him say that many a time. Then in Romans 13:8, Paul writes this, and that's in the chapter we call liberties. He said, let no debt remain outstanding except the continued debt to love one another. For whosoever loves others has fulfilled the law, the old law and the new law as well. So you see, Jesus is teaching us a hard lesson. And I want to read these other verses and then I'll close. You have heard that it was said, love your neighbors, hate your enemies. But here is what I tell you. But here is what I tell you. Love your enemies and pray for those who hurt you. Now let me ask you something. If somebody took the life of your child, and we're talking about you, it's hard for us to sit down and say, hey, I forgive my enemy, or I forgive the one that did it. It would be hard for me to lay down and say, I pray for that person. We have examples in our lives at times, not that tragic maybe, but we have things in our lives that we've been accused of, ridiculed of, and we've been hurt. Even our families have been hurt, maybe. But Jesus is teaching us that we're not to retaliate against them, but rather, from a Christian standpoint, we are to what? Pray for them. Pray that they don't have that kind of attitude towards us. And to pray that their eyes will be open and they will see the right way of doing things. Then you will be the sons of your Father who is in heaven. He causes his sun to shine on evil people and good people as well. He sends rain for those who do right and for those who don't. What does this tell us? What did Jesus say here? Jesus is saying this, I believe. God loves everybody. He has no respect of person. He let the same thing happen to the righteous as well as the unrighteous. The sun shines. It doesn't have a cool spot for me during the day because I'm trying to live a Christian life. And over here, It's real hot for somebody that don't. The same temperatures are for all of us. God's blessings is bestowed on every man and woman. The difference between the Christian and the non-Christian is this. We can take those blessings and do something about it. Live by them. Obey what He says. And become children of His. Or we can be like the world. We can turn our back and say, I don't agree with it. I hate you because you're not God. There is no God. And retaliate against everything and anything that comes along. What's the outcome going to be for these two people? One's going to live eternity in hell. The other one is going to live eternity with the Father in heaven. That's what Jesus is telling us. We are to do everything in our power to do the things that is right. And in the last 3 verses is this. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Or let me put it this way. If you do good to those that you like and don't do good to the other people, what good and what reward is it? Even the tax collectors do that. Even our law enforcement do that today. If you know somebody, you can get a favor done, can't you? But if you don't know them, you ain't going to get a favor done. And Jesus has said, if you love everybody, treat everybody the same, then you have rewards put into heaven. If you greet only your own people, what more are you doing than others? Now, I like that verse. If somebody came through the door that you knew, you walked up, shake hands, and said, oh, I'm glad to see you here this morning. But let's say one of the people that came in through the door was somebody that had hurt your feelings sometimes. You'd have problems with them in your life. Would you get up and go back and shake their hands and say, oh, I love you, I'm glad to see you? You wouldn't, would you? That's human nature. But God is saying this. This is what we have to do as Christians. We have to forget the world. What did Paul say? Paul said it best. He said, I am weak in the body, but I'm strong in the spirit. What is he saying? I'm at war. My body is at war every day. Your body's at war. My body's at war. We're at war every day because we are fighting. Our spiritual side is fighting against our fleshly side. This is what Paul was saying. Jesus knew this. He knew that we were going to have that conflict in our lives. But you know, there's a saying that I read. You know how we can get away from that a lot of times? The more we're in prayer, the more we're in the Word of God, the least we have to think about our enemies. And I think this is the cure a lot of times to us. But oh, how would it be though if we could be more like Christ, and one of our enemies came through the door of the church, and we could walk up and put our arms around, oh, I'm glad to see you here today. What do you think that person would feel like? He would do that like that. So this is what Jesus is telling you. So be perfect, just as your Father in heaven is perfect. He's not saying that we're going to be perfect, did he? He just says, so be perfect. So live to be perfect. And there's a day coming in our lives, each and every one of us. We're not perfect now. We have not reached perfection in our life as Christians. But I can tell you one thing. On the day of judgment, when Christ comes down and he looks at you and says, "Come unto me, thou good and faithful servant." You have reached perfection now. And that's the only time we're going to be exactly like Christ was, in all respect. But in our lives today, we are to embody his teachings. We are to embody into what he is telling us we are to try to do in our lives. And the more we do it, the closer we come to being more like Christ is today. So my last thought is this. Get rid of hate. Get rid of worry. Get rid of fear. And replace it in your heart with love. Thank you for your time.